and maybe even set you free. Most people believe the biggest obstacles in their lives are outside of them. Difficult circumstances, unfair opportunities, or the limitations placed on them by society. But in reality, one of the most powerful forces shaping your life is something far more invisible. The story you tell yourself every single day. Your mind is constantly narrating your experiences, interpreting events, and assigning meaning to everything that happens to you. Over time, these interpretations slowly form a personal narrative about who you are, what you deserve, and what is possible for you. The danger is that many of these stories were never consciously chosen. They were inherited from childhood experiences, social expectations, past failures, or the opinions of others. Yet without realizing it, people begin to live as if those stories are absolute truth. Think about how often a quiet thought can shape an entire decision. Someone might consider applying for a new opportunity, starting a project, or expressing their true voice. But then a small sentence appears in their mind. I'm not ready for this. That one thought can stop a dream before it even begins. The mind is incredibly persuasive when it repeats something often enough. When you hear the same belief again and again, it starts to feel familiar, and familiarity can easily disguise itself as truth. A person may start believing they are not talented enough, not confident enough, not experienced enough, even when none of those things are objectively true. Slowly, these beliefs create invisible boundaries around their life, shaping the choices they make and the risks they avoid. What makes this even more powerful is that the brain naturally looks for evidence to support the story it already believes. If someone believes they are destined to fail, they will notice every small setback as proof that they were right all along. Meanwhile, they may overlook their successes, their strengths, and the opportunities that quietly appear in front of them. This selective attention strengthens the narrative, turning it into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Over time, the person is no longer simply experiencing life. They are reinforcing a script that limits their potential. The tragedy is that the prison they feel trapped in was constructed piece by piece through repeated thoughts and assumptions. Many people can trace these inner stories back to moments that seemed small at the time. A teacher who once doubted them, a mistake that embarrassed them, a comparison that made them feel inferior. These experiences plant seeds of belief in the mind. If those seeds are watered with repetition and emotional weight, they begin to grow roots deep inside one's identity. Eventually, the person stops questioning the story altogether. They simply accept it as a permanent description of who they are. But identity is not a fixed object. It is a constantly evolving reflection of the beliefs you choose to carry forward. The story you repeat today quietly becomes the reality you step into tomorrow. What is extraordinary, however, is that the moment you become aware of this process, you gain the power to interrupt it. Awareness creates distance between you and the narrative your mind has been repeating. Instead of automatically believing every thought, you begin to observe it. You start asking questions. They taste belief actually true? Where did this story begin? Is there another way to interpret my experiences? These questions can feel uncomfortable at first because they challenge the familiar identity you have carried for years. Yet they also create space for a new perspective to emerge, one that recognizes your abilities, your resilience, and the possibilities that once seemed unreachable. When you begin rewriting your internal narrative, the shift may not feel dramatic at first. It often starts with small moments of courage. Applying for something you once believed was beyond you. Speaking up where you once stayed silent. Or trusting your instincts when doubt tries to pull you back. Each of these moments slowly weakens the old story and strengthens a new one. Over time, the voice that once limited you becomes quieter, replaced by a deeper awareness of your own potential. The truth is that the mind will always tell stories, but you are the one who decides which story becomes your life. As the life you experience tomorrow will always grow from the story you choose to believe about yourself today. So choose a story that empowers you, expands you, and reminds you that your potential has never been limited, only misunderstood. Das. One of the quietest prisons people build around themselves is the need for approval. It begins subtly, almost harmlessly, in the early stages of life. As children, we learn that praise feels good and rejection feels painful. We notice how smiles appear when we behave a certain way, when we follow instructions, when we meet expectations. Slowly, without realizing it, we begin connecting our sense of worth to the reactions of others. Over time, this pattern becomes deeply rooted. Instead of asking ourselves what truly feels right, we begin asking a different question. Will people approve of this? That shift might seem small, but it changes the direction of an entire life. As people grow older, the desire for approval becomes more sophisticated, but also more powerful. It shows up in the career someone chooses, not because it fulfills them, but because it impresses others. It appears in relationships where someone stays longer than they should, simply because leaving might disappoint family or society. It even influences the way people present themselves to the world, carefully crafting images, personalities, and lifestyles designed to earn admiration. Social media has only intensified this pattern. The constant measurement of likes, comments, and validation can make people feel as though their value depends on how loudly the world applauds them. But living this way slowly creates a silent exhaustion, because performing for approval requires constant adjustment. The problem with seeking approval is that it quietly disconnects a person from their own inner voice. Every individual carries a natural sense of intuition, a quiet understanding of what feels meaningful, what aligns with their purpose, and what direction their life wants to move in. But when someone becomes overly focused on pleasing others, that inner voice becomes difficult to hear. Instead of listening inward, they begin looking outward for guidance. Decisions are shaped by expectations, comparisons, and the fear of judgment. Eventually, the person may achieve things that look successful from the outside, yet still feel an emptiness inside, because those achievements were never truly theirs. What makes this trap even more complicated is that approval is never permanent. The expectations of others constantly change. One group may admire a decision while another criticizes it. A path that pleases people today might disappoint them tomorrow. When someone builds their life around approval, they become dependent on something they can never fully control. This creates anxiety, hesitation, and self-doubt, because every decision carries the weight of possible judgment. Instead of living freely, the person becomes trapped in an endless cycle of trying to satisfy opinions that shift like the wind. Freedom begins when someone realizes that approval is not the same as alignment. Approval comes from outside. Alignment comes from within. When a person chooses alignment, they begin making decisions based on values rather than applause. They pursue work that feels meaningful, even if it is unconventional. They express their true thoughts, even if not everyone agrees. They walk paths that may not make sense to others, but feel deeply authentic to them. This shift does not mean ignoring people completely or becoming indifferent to relationships. It simply means that the foundation of one's life is no longer built on the approval of others, but on the clarity of one's own purpose. When people finally release the constant need to be approved, something remarkable happens. Their energy returns. Their confidence grows. Their creativity expands because they are no longer confined by the fear of judgment. Instead of performing a role written by others, they begin writing their own story. And that story often leads them toward opportunities, connections, and achievements that feel far more fulfilling than anything approval alone could provide. The truth is that the world rarely rewards those who simply conform. It remembers those who had the courage to live authentically. As the moment you stop chasing approval and start honoring your own truth, is the moment your life begins to belong fully to you. As comfort has a strange way of disguising itself as safety. It feels warm, predictable, and reassuring, like a familiar room you've lived in for years. Inside that room, everything is known: the routine, the expectations, the limits. Nothing surprises you, and nothing threatens your sense of stability. At first glance, this seems like the ideal place to stay. After all, Human beings naturally seek security. But the danger of comfort is not that it feels good. The danger is that it quietly convinces you that staying where you are is better than discovering what could be waiting beyond it. Over time, comfort begins to shape your decisions, guiding you toward the familiar and gently pulling you away from anything uncertain. Many people remain in situations that no longer serve their growth simply because they have become accustomed to them. It might be a job that no longer excites them, yet it provides stability. It might be a routine that has lost its meaning, but feels too difficult to change. It might even be dreams that were once powerful, but slowly faded because pursuing them required stepping into unfamiliar territory. The human mind often prefers predictable dissatisfaction over uncertain possibility. In other words, people sometimes choose a life they know they don't fully love rather than risk stepping into something unknown that might transform them. What makes comfort so powerful is that it rarely announces itself as a limitation. Instead, it whispers quiet justifications. This is good enough. At least it's safe. Maybe later. These thoughts sound reasonable, even responsible. But if they repeat often enough, they slowly build invisible boundaries around your life. Days turn into months, months into years, and before long, a person may realize that the dreams they once carried have been replaced by habits they never truly chose. Comfort becomes a routine, and routine becomes identity. At that point, leaving the comfort zone doesn't just feel risky. It feels like stepping away from the version of yourself you've become accustomed to being. Growth, however, has always lived outside the borders of comfort. Every meaningful transformation in life requires a moment where certainty disappears and courage takes its place. Think about the first time someone moves to a new city, starts a challenging project, or chooses a path that no one around them fully understands. In those moments, comfort fades and uncertainty rises. Yet it is precisely within that uncertainty that people discover their hidden strengths. They learn new skills, develop resilience, and uncover abilities they never realized they possessed. Without discomfort, these discoveries would never occur. The irony is that the comfort people too often becomes the very thing that keeps them feeling trapped. When life becomes too predictable, the mind begins to crave meaning, challenge, and progress. Without those elements, even stability can start to feel suffocating. A person may wake up each day sensing that something is missing, yet struggle to identify exactly what it is. That feeling is often the quiet signal that growth has been postponed for too long. It is the inner voice reminding them that they were not meant to remain in the same place forever. Stepping beyond comfort does not always require dramatic changes or reckless risks. Sometimes it begins with small acts of courage. Trying something unfamiliar, speaking up where silence once felt easier, or pursuing a curiosity that has been ignored for years. Each small step expands the boundaries of what feels possible. Gradually, the once intimidating unknown becomes the new normal. As this happens, a person begins to realize that the world outside their comfort zone was never as frightening as it once appeared. In fact, it is often where the most meaningful experiences, relationships, and achievements are waiting to be discovered. As comfort may feel like protection, but true freedom begins the moment you are brave enough to step beyond what is familiar and grow into the person you were always capable of becoming.